Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men Volume 2 Adjectiveless X-Men number 22, cover dated July 1993. So this is quite a striking cover by Andy Kubert. I really like the colouring on this. It's very difficult to find out who is the colourist for covers, but this one works very well, very eye-catching, and we've got Silver Samurai looming over with a samurai sword, Psylocke and Revanche. And the question, of course, is what is each woman's relation to the other, and who is the real Betsy Braddock? So let's open this issue up to find out the answer to those questions, at least as Fabian Nicieza writes it. And the title of the story here is The Mask Behind the Facade. Fabian Nicieza, writer, Andy Kubert, penciler, Mark Pennington, inker, Bill Oakley, letterer, and Joe Rosas, colorist. So a nice opening splash here with Gambit with his deck of kinetically charged cards ready. We've got Psylocke with the focused totality of her psychic powers and her psychic knife, and then we've got Revanche with her psychic katana, facing off against Silver Samurai, who at the end of the previous issue slashed Hank McCoy the Beast from behind with his sword. So, you know, Silver Samurai always talks about honor, and he's always about trying to regain the honor of the Yashida family. And that's a pretty dishonorable move, striking a foe from behind. So, what would we say, like hypocritical on Silver Samurai's part to be talking about honor. And this is a point that's made in the previous issue as well, that Revanche and Psylocke have the same fighting style. So we see their body language mirroring each other here in terms of the way they're fighting. So pretty dynamic double page splash here with an inset panel of the Silver Samurai saying, you do not understand the stakes we play for X-Men. Lord Nyoirin has tendered an offer which would allow my family, Clan Yashida, to regain its honoured place among the Jigoku underworld. That is an offer worth fighting for and worth killing for. So great artwork here by Andy Kubert, who obviously has come back revitalised after the break he had previous issue, which was guest drawn by Brandon Peterson before he skipped off to Image Comics. So really great double page spread here, and a nice not quite worm's eye view, but a nice kind of bottom looking up angle on the characters as they face off against each other and leap into battle. And a nice top down shot here of Gambit somersaulting over Silver Samurai's striking of his sword there, which cuts in half this statue. And Gambit says to Silver Samurai, as if you've ever needed an excuse for that Canuccio. So that is his real name. Pardon coming through. Show disrespect, Gaijin, says Silver Samurai, and while you do, I will pin your flapping tongue to the wall. So he throws his sword, but it strikes only into the painting as Gambit dodges away. And let's see what happens here. So finally, Psylocke and Revanche strike Silver Samurai and knock him down. Revanche and Psylocke striking him with their psychic knife and sword in tandem, in unison. Great imagery here by Andy Kubert. And even the detail, quite a lot of detail in this issue in the backgrounds. He's not skimping on backgrounds. We've got the detail of these demon faces either side of Quanon in the painting. There we've got the chair there as well. He's not scrimping on details. He could, but he's not. And you have to appreciate that commitment to detail. And of course, Beast here has recovered from being struck from behind, and says, incapacitated, dear ladies, but not unconscious. So he punches Silver Samurai in the head and basically breaks his helmet, revealing the man beneath. And then he says, so sorry I missed out on the frolic and fun. And Gambit says, Henri was nothing but the hors d'oeuvre we've been serving up. Now, looking at what we got here, so the samurai sword through the painting, a scroll behind the painting. I would imagine then, ladies, that this is the main course for the evening. And Revanche knows what it is. It's Nyoirin's diary. So again, a reminder that if you look back to issues 17 and 18, Kwannon, Revanche, has an established relationship with Nyoirin. She is his agent. And so all of this is, for the reader who remembers those issues, a setup. Yes? Then the scene switches to Tokyo, Japan, a rainy evening in the Ginza district, where most men and women come to forget past miseries, if only for a fleeting moment. That's a nice establishing shot by Andy Kubert there. A nice combination of inks and colours. Or to forge future alliances which will last across the bonds and bounds of generations ahead. One man comes to conquer through duplicity, malice and greed. It's Shinobi Shaw. So we get a little editorial footnote here by Bob Harris regarding the fact that what Shinobi Shaw says here, gentlemen, so sorry I'm late, is translated from the Japanese. And that is the only footnote you get from Bob Harris in this issue. And there are important footnotes that ought to have been in here, referring to, in particular, Uncanny X-Men 255, but I'll get to that in due course. So who is Shinobi Shaw meeting? He's meeting major figures in the Japanese crime world. So here we've got Matsuo Tsurayaba. We have got Lord Tatsuo, who is Opal Tanaka's grandfather. And apparently in X Factor 64, it seems like he was killed, but here he is alive again. Opal Tanaka being Bobby Drake Iceman's girlfriend. And here we have Lord Nyoirin himself. And it is noted that there is nobody there to talk about the Hong Kong region. And this is because it's believed at this point that the Mandarin is dead. But should the Mandarin still be alive, says Nyoirin, he will claim it as his anyway. So great artwork here by Andy Kubert as well, with these crime lords at their dinner. And the geisha girls in the background. Again, just not skimping on background detail. Nicely done. And here we have Shinobi Shaw saying, well, quite frankly, I have no interest in these games of districts and boundaries. I wish what I have always wished, to be left alone to conduct my business, and that my mother remained separate from your maddening schemes. She suffered enough at the hands of my father, Sebastian Shaw. Beyond that, this meeting means little to me. So we don't know who exactly his mother is, but she is Asian, and this is a story that is yet to be told 100%. And of course, some motivation now being provided for Shinobi Shaw being so easygoing about the murder of his father, Sebastian. Now, Lord Tatsuo doesn't take kindly to Shinobi Shaw's rudeness, and he says, "You arrogant whelp, do not seek to tell us matters of clan honour mean nothing. My own daughter tried recently to poison me and failed only due to the intervention of my loyal kin. Ensuring our mutual well-being is vital if we are to carry our tradition down to our descendants." So Shaw says, "I did not seek to disparage your family name. My sincerest apologies, really. Why don't we continue?" So a bit of action here. Dinner disrupted, table broken, but back to their crime talk. And here we switch scenes to Anchorage, Alaska, where there is the grandparents of Scott Summers, Philip and Deborah, and he, at the end of the previous issue, was about to tell them what really happened to Madeline and to their baby. So he's told them, and he's upset his grandparents. His grandmother has dropped the food on the floor, and his grandfather's thinking about taking up smoking and drinking again, even though he hasn't over the last decade. And so Scott says here, "I know how this all sounds, and I'm sorry to burden you both with it, but I have to tell you about it. I need to tell you what really happened." And his grandmother says, we knew you and your father led different lives, Scott, but we didn't know, dear Lord, we didn't know. And this is interesting here. Great panel as well by Andy Kubert. 3/4 profile and looking up as well. That's a motif of his that I commented on in the previous issue. So here we have it again. My son Nathan was infected by a strange virus. He was dying. In order to save his life, I allowed him to be taken to a future where I was assured he'd be cured. In retrospect, I guess the choice was simple. See him die in my arms or let him go so that he might have a chance. So I let him go, he says more quietly. I watched him disappear in a white glow of light and I lost him. So here's where we could use a footnote to X Factor 68. And then his grandmother says, and you don't know, you'll never know if it was the right choice or not. No, he says quietly. I found out. Heaven help me, I found out. I think that by saving Nathan's life, I ruined it. I think my choice turned my son into a madman, a demagogue from the future who called himself Stryfe, a man who came back in time to get revenge on the father whose choice destroyed his sanity. Nice top-down view here. But I'm not supposed to say that. Jean and I, the professor and my other friends, we don't talk about it, as if by shutting it all out, we'll make it go away. So this is interesting. This reveals, and Cyclops has been thinking about Nathan and Cable ever since the end of Executioner's Song in all the previous issues of X-Men, including the Soul Skinner 3-issue trilogy. He was thinking about this. And so this is the conclusion he's come to, that it's Stryfe who was Nathan. And also it's revealing that nobody wants to talk about it back at the X-Mansion. They're leaving him to deal with it on his own. And interesting for Scott, like, who always has kind of bottled things up in himself, he needed somebody to talk to about it all, and so he has his grandparents to talk to about it, which is lucky for him at least. And then he continues and says, but it doesn't ever go away. The truth is, I saw my own son as an adult, and because of the choice I made, my son has grown up to become everything I've fought my entire life to stop. And then there's Cable, I think, and then interrupted by a knock at the door, even as he stokes the fire. And who is it that's at the door? And this is really interesting. It's a neighbour of his grandparents, Mike, morning out of coffee again. And the neighbour says, no, Phil, actually a tree fell last night and hit the shed. I have to break it down, and you know how cranky my chainsaw is. So Scott's grandfather is going to lend Mike his chainsaw. And he introduces Mike to Scott. And Mike says, oh, we've met before, Phil. I'm sorry, have we? Says Scott. Certainly, son, but you were much younger. I don't remember, says Cyclops. And here we go. He takes his baseball cap off. You were just a little boy, Scott. Yes, you were young. Very, very young. And who does this look like, except for Mr. Sinister, yes? Now, the magenta diamond on his forehead, is this just for the reader, or is this visible on his forehead to Scott and to his grandparents? What's going on? But this is Mr. Sinister, yes. Now, I want to address the fact that we've got an insert here, an advertisement for the 30th anniversary events surrounding Avengers and X-Men. And I'm going to skip past these pages because I will take a look at them in an upcoming video review. They're worth looking at, but not this time around because I want to continue with the review of the story itself. But in an upcoming issue of Uncanny X-Men, I will pause and look at that insert advertisement. So back to Japan and Nyoirin's estate and the aftermath of knocking out Silver Samurai. And now they're going to have a read of the scroll, Nyoirin's diary. Nice establishing shot here again by Andy Kubert. And so who's speaking here? You claim to be unable to read the scroll's Japanese text, Psylocke. No less than your ability to read it. So that's Revanche said that. No less than your ability to read it. My body is Asian, but my mind remains European, she says. And then Hank says, I think, ladies, we are all in agreement that this is a complicated enough situation as is, without the two of you playing tit for tat. So Revanche apologizes. She says the stress is getting to them all. Gambit comically says, let's kiss and make up at the Blackbird A. Good thief never hangs around to count his purse. So that's a good point by him. And, you know, it'll come true what he's hinting at shortly. So Psylocke says, "You're right, Gambit. The sooner we leave, the better." But Revanche draws out her psychic katana and strikes Psylocke from behind. And she says, "The answers lie here, both in this mansion, written in this scroll, and in your mind." So now we're getting to what everything has been leading up to. It's Nicieza's retcon of Asian Psylocke's origin. So here we go. "We do not leave until this situation has been settled," says Revanche. And a nice color hold here on her psychic katana. And Revanche says, "The pain Psylocke feels comes only because she resists my psychic link, Gambit." And Psylocke says she's not resisting. And Revanche says, "Why is that, Psylocke? Are you unwilling to discover the truth? Then listen to the words from Nyoirin's scroll." So this is a nice panel here where we've got Psylocke listening, and then in her face is this image of herself on the docks of Hong Kong. This is really nicely done by Kubert. Quanon has not returned. And also, nice lettering here by Bill Oakley, where the captions from Nyoirin's diary are rendered as if they're written on scroll, and also the capital letters designed to recall Japanese script. So pretty nice, thoughtful work here by the whole art team. And great colouring, rich colouring by Joe Rosas as well. Quanon has not returned. She was sent on a routine assignment in Osaka several days ago. Sources have told me she was seen in Hong Kong. Why would she go there? Is she there of her own free will, or was she abducted? And Revanche says to Psylocke, "Think back, Quanon, remember that night on the pier? You were there to end a life, a shipping clerk who had betrayed Nyoirin's trust. And you did something very alien to you. You reached out to save a life instead. My life, Quanon. Betsy Braddock had just emerged through the Siege Perilous, her mind fractured, her body battered raw. And I sensed your presence, so whole, so alive. Which came first, you reaching out to her or Betsy reaching out to you? Either way, one touch, physical and spiritual, contact was all it took. In Betsy's chaotic state, your minds fused together. You both screamed out, cutting through the still fog of the cold night." Now, the problem with all of this is a scene, a page-long scene in Uncanny X-Men 255, a review of which is on the channel, which shows British Betsy in her Outback armour being pulled from the sea by the hand under the control of Matsuo Tsurayaba. And we clearly see on that page British Betsy, and that is the person that is taken then in issue 256 by Tsurayaba and transformed into Asian-bodied Psylocke. So what's happened? Well, it turns out that Fabian Nicieza apparently never read Uncanny X-Men 255, was unaware of that page featuring British Betsy in her taken by Tsurayaba. So who is ultimately responsible for this contradiction of established narrative continuity going back to issue 255? Well, it's the editor of 255 and the editor of X-Men 22. That's Bob Harris. And like I said, the only footnote you get from that guy in this issue is regarding the translation from the Japanese by Shinobi Shaw. No other footnotes. No footnotes here to issue 255, 256. Now, one could take a charitable perspective on it and say that Bob Harris was busy organizing the 30th anniversary of the Avengers and the X-Men, and that he didn't have time for these details. But he had an assistant editor, and somebody needed to be paying attention to these matters, because ultimately Nicieza in upcoming issues of X-Men has to return to this and retcon his retcon. That's ultimately what comes of all of this. But let me know what you think about the whole business in the comment section to this video. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. So this is the page from Uncanny X-Men 255, which contradicts Fabian Nicieza's retcon of Betsy Braddock's transformation into an Asian ninja warrior. We have Tsurayaba arriving at an island in the South China Sea, which is obviously a covert base for the Hand. He says he's coming to inspect the Hand's progress, and he found their report most intriguing. As you can see, Sir says this particular Hand member, all is well in hand. Is that a pun? Anyway, whatever. Tsurayaba says, and the woman, she was found a week ago, washed up on our shore. No clothes, no identification, no memory either. We soon determined. What about your surveillance systems? Asks Tsurayaba. How could she approach undetected? She's invisible to our scanners, and that's because of Roma's spell back in Uncanny X-Men 229. In fact, as far as our electronic systems are concerned, she doesn't exist. When we began interrogating her, she replied in the questioner's native tongue, perfectly, no matter how obscure the dialect. Our spirit weaver psychics determined the woman as a telepath. She was picking up each person's language from their thoughts. That's when we requested guidance from the Jonin. And so that's Tsurayaba. And he says, and well you did, my friend, for this woman is known to me. She's the mutant X-Man, Psylocke, and by all the gods who ever were, I know full well what the Hand may do with her, and that is transform her. And so this completely contradicts Nicieza's retcon in X-Men 22, and there you go, a flat contradiction. Thoughts. So let's continue with this story. This is Revanche speaking, and you lost all sense of yourself. We lost all sense of ourselves. You ran blindly, unstable, only to be found by Matsuo Tsurayaba. Wrong, yes? Who used the Mandarin and the resources of the Hand to piece together the fractured pieces that were both of our minds into a unified whole. From the scroll, it cannot be my Quanon who was in the employ of the Hand, can it? And yet I've heard of a British woman found at the docks the night Quanon disappeared. Perhaps I should visit the sanitarium where this foreigner lies and start finding out what truly happened that night. Nyoirin found me, took me in, and little by little helped Betsy Braddock regain her memory. Also that he could regain the services of Quanon, a woman who was not only his prime assassin, but his lover as well. And all the while Psylocke still has that psychic katana running right through her. And she's shocked and says no. And the Beast thinks it's all so complicated. Gambit here, using his brain, thinks that there are contradictions, there are unanswered questions like how come British Betsy is reading Japanese handwriting, and how'd she learn to fight like a ninja? Good questions, Gambit. And she responds, the only question we need to address, Gambit, is why she chose to walk among you impersonating me. That's a moral misdirection. And then she says, and the answer is quite evident, the woman you know as Psylocke is still in the employ of the Hand, and as soon as she is ordered, she will betray the X-Men. So Psylocke being framed here by a character whose codename is Revanche, which means revenge. Yes? So how come the lads aren't that bit more suspicious? They should be, yes? Anyway, back to Tokyo, the end of the crime bosses meeting. Nice panel here of the limousines pulling away from the cocktail lounge in the rain. Nicely rendered. And then we've got the aftermath with Tsurayaba and Shinobi Shaw. I like the way that Shinobi Shaw is characterized in issues of Uncanny X-Men and X-Men here as a hedonist, loves the drink, loves the booze, a pleasure seeker. I like it. It's nicely done. And a nice little use of a screen tone here as well on the fabric of Tsurayaba's suit. That's a nice little detail too. And so the tete-a-tete between the two, where Shinobi Shaw is goading Tsurayaba is interrupted by Games Master, and a nice colour hold here of Games Master appearing to them. Games Master, the omnipath who's in constant psychic contact with every mind on the planet. Games Master says, "Do not belittle Tsurayaba Matsuo's accomplishments, Shinobi, for he is older than you and has skillfully wagered body and soul in the pursuit of life's perilous challenges, and more honestly than you have. Many thanks for your words of support, Games Master," says Tsurayaba. "I abide by your final decisions in the games we play," says Shinobi, "but why did you grant Matsuo, who's not a member of the Upstarts, the right to kill Psylocke?" So, Games Master explains, "Shinobi, when you and the others asked me to arbitrate your ongoing competition, never did I say I couldn't respect the carefully planned games of others as well." And then he disappears. So Tsurayaba says, "Enough then, shall allow me the pleasure of my kill at the time and place of my choosing, and not yours. For when all is said and done, the true nature of this lump of clay I've sculpted into a twisted, fragile, killing flower will blossom to surprise and delight you all, most especially Quanon and Elizabeth Braddock." And now the two women start to fight again, but Gambit intervenes and knocks out Psylocke with his bow staff, and Beast pulls back Revanche and says, "You do well to control yourself as well, Elizabeth, because you have instigated as much as she has agitated. But Hank, I want my honour back," she says. "I want my name back and I want my life back." And Psylocke says, "Mine is not yours to take. I am not who you say I am, as you are not who you claim." And now arrives home. Gambit was right. Time to split as soon as they have the diary. But here arrives Lord Nyoirin, and Silver Samurai is on his feet again. And he says, "Now, as to your little ongoing debate, isn't the answer as obvious as it is simple? You are both who you claim to be. You are both Quanon and both Elizabeth Braddock. The essential question is, can either of you ever truly become the whole again? And more, do you desire to? But remember, issue 17 and 18, this is all part of a revenge strategy by Quanon, who is Revanche. Yes, so we shall see." And then our last page is goes back to Alaska, and Scott going to Mr. Milbury's house. "I came to see if you needed a hand with that tree." I wonder, was that the only reason he went there? And then who does he see except for, and this is a great top-down image of Mr. Sinister. This is really, really nicely done by Andy Kubert. And Sinister says, "Why, Scott, you've grown to be such a kind man, but then you were a kind boy." I'm afraid we speak in metaphor, for the only tree Mr. Milbury has ever had any real interest in is your family tree, bloodlines and breeding, evolution and heirs, the very stuff of life, Scott. Now then, having said that, would you prefer to join me? Or does the Summers family line end here and now?" So next issue, Mr. Sinister versus Cyclops, Revanche versus Psylocke, and the Dark Riders versus, the winner will surprise you. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 22. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.